Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from a throwaway account from the relationship advice subreddit and says, my 36 female husband, 52 male, asked me to flash some road workers. I did. And then he got mad and pushed me out of the car next to them. How do we move on from this? Whew. Been together 10 years and married for 6. The last 2 or 3 years, he started to show less and less interest in me. He does subscribe to a couple of OnlyFans accounts, which I'm not bothered about as it's no different to porn. So I know he still has sexual urges. I've tried talking to him a couple of times about this and told him I'm getting bored and frustrated, and he knows I'm willing to try anything sexual. So if there's anything he wants to do to get him motivated, I'll try it. He just says duly noted and carries on with his day, which is frustrating. A few nights ago, we had friends around for tea, and we got onto the subject of commutes and roadworks, with them saying how their commute has more than doubled due to a road they use having roadworks. Carol, the wife of the couple, then says, we found a way to make it more entertaining though, haven't we? To her husband, and they both started laughing. She then tells us that the roadworks are about 3 miles long with groups of workers spread out to maybe 7 or 8 groups, and they're normally going 10 to 15 miles an hour. So when they get near one of the groups, he beeps and she flashes them and they all cheer. I couldn't believe it as they seem so straight-laced. That night when they left, my husband was saying how brave it is of them and that we should do it the next morning. I asked if he's sure. This is a man who didn't like when I posted a bikini pic on Facebook. And he said yes, and we even had sex that night for the first time in months, and he initiated for the first time in years. The next morning, we were both off work, and as soon as he woke up, he mentioned me flashing. The next morning, we were both off to work maybe, and as soon as he woke up, he mentioned me flashing. I asked if he's sure, and it wasn't just horny talk, and what if men don't want to be flashed? He said he's sure, and all men want to be flashed. We drive to the road and we see a group of workmen, and my husband gets all giddy and says, are you ready? I say yes, and he says now, and he beeps his horn and I lift my top up and they all cheer. We are going about 10 miles an hour when suddenly he slams his brakes on and tells me to get out. I was in shock. His face is red with anger and he's shouting, get out you fucking slag. I started crying and he's leaning over me, opening my car door, and then takes off my seatbelt and starts pushing me out. The car's behind her beeping as he stopped traffic and he's yelling at the top of his voice. By now the workers have heard the commotion and 2 of them are rushing over to help. I turn to look at them and as I do, he pushes me really hard and the top half of my body falls out the car and I put my hands down. One of the workers is screaming at my husband and starts trying to open his door. The other worker is by me and quickly drags me out the car. He told me afterwards he saw my husband put the car in gear and thought he was going to drive off with me hanging out the car. My husband just left me. I was still only wearing a vest top and pajama shorts and my slippers as he'd wanted to rush out and do this. My phone was in his car and I didn't have any house keys. One of the workers took his jacket off and wrapped me up in that, took me to a cabin that was their canteen and put the heaters on and made a cup of tea. I was so embarrassed. This lot had seen my boobs and they seen me getting abused and then fell out of a car and then rescued me all in the space of 30 seconds. I kept apologizing to them and said it was his idea, but they said it's okay and it happens a few times a day and they're used to it. But I think they were just trying to make me feel better. They were laughing and joking with me and were all sweet and funny. They asked if I wanted to ring anyone, but I don't know anyone's number apart from work, and I didn't want them picking me up wearing next to nothing from a building site. I asked if I could just ring a taxi, but they said I can't get in a taxi dressed how I am. The man, I'm assuming was their team leader, told one of them to drive me wherever I wanted to go. So I asked if I could go to my mum's about 5 miles away. They gave me some spare work boots to walk across the mud to the van and 2 of them drove me to my mum's. And they were really sweet making sure I was okay and even walked me to the front door. When my mum answered, I was hysterical and crying. And they told her me and my husband had an argument and he left me by the side of the road. My mum offered them a drink and I tried to give them their coat and boots back, but they said it's okay. I told my mum we were driving to McDonald's and got into an argument. I didn't tell her about the pushing or anything. She drove me home and let me in with a spare key she has. I packed some things and went back to my mum's. My husband has been home as my phone was on the table. In the 5 days since, he's been ringing me non-stop saying he's sorry and he don't know what came over him. He said he heard someone shout, "Nice pair," and it made him angry. My friends are saying leave. His are obviously telling me to give him another chance. I'm 50-50, but if I do stay, I'm going to insist on couples counseling for us both and sex therapy for either for him or for both of us. He says he doesn't want to involve other people in the relationship. It feels silly to throw it all away after a few seconds of madness, and I should have just said no when he asked me to flash, as I know he's quite insecure. I was blinded by finally getting some sex and attention from him and thought I could get more. I took the workers their jacket and boots back and also made them 2 cakes and bought them 1,000 bags of Yorkshire tea as a thank you. In the comments, Alarm Jellyfish says, "I don't think any relationship advice will do anything to help your situation, nor will couples counseling. This is definitely the sort of situation where couples counseling will only escalate problematic and abusive behavior. What you need, quite frankly, is a divorce lawyer." OP says, "That's the thought that's coming more prevalent in my mind. I took pics of the bruises and scuffs on my arms and legs afterwards, and I keep looking at them and thinking, what would I say to anyone else who's shown me them?" Instructions Unclear says, "Yes. Think about your little sister or best friend and imagine hearing that this happened to them. I'd personally be out for blood." Mochiko says, "You sound codependent on him and everything he tells you to do to please him, because you are terrified that he will leave you. Now you're in a situation where you did what he told you, but he ditched you anyway. He left you on the side of the road to the mercy of strangers that you just flashed with nothing on you. That was very dangerous, and it makes me question if he wanted something to happen to you. His relationship isn't safe for you anymore, and that's probably for some time. He's abusive. He doesn't want to do couples counseling because he knows what they would tell you. It isn't wise to do that with him anyway, because all that therapy is going to teach him are more weak points of you to take advantage of. Look for therapy for yourself. You know that he doesn't love you. That's why you accept all these behaviors of him. You can't make him love you by accepting his disrespect. You need to leave. It won't get better. It will get worse." And there was many comments pointing out the verbal and the physical abuse and, that it's only going to escalate from this point on. So, divorce immediately, do not go back, etc., etc. What he did in that moment is batshit crazy. Other people also mentioning, including strangers, in what you're doing is absolutely wrong at the same time as well. Whether some people enjoyed it or not, exposing yourself to anyone who's unconsenting is just wrong. But other people were saying that she was pressured into doing so by the husband, who was clearly up to something at the same time. So OP came in with her first update and said, "Something happened last week and I've decided I don't want to be with him anymore. It did involve physical abuse and I have photos and witnesses, but I don't want to go down the route of involving the police. I bought the house in 2012. It's in my name. He moved in 2015. I've always paid the mortgage, as he said he wasn't putting money into something he doesn't own, which is fair enough. We split all other bills 50-50. Any house modifications I have offer with proof, but maintenance on the house we split 50-50. I'll eventually talk to a solicitor, but I just wanted to know exactly where I stand before doing so. Google doesn't really help, as some places say he has the right to half, others say he doesn't, as it predates the marriage. No prenup or anything was ever signed. Thank you for taking the time to read this." OP says, "Ex-domestic abuse detective here. An occupation order is the quickest and best way to get him out of the house. Contact the charity ncdv.org.uk, who should be able to apply for one for you for free. The house sale and splitting of assets can then take place in slow time, for which you will need to speak to a family law solicitor." OP says, "Thank you, I'll look into that tonight." Another commenter says, "Without involving the police, you're in for a long fight. The police are your best bet." And another user says, "The police can only remove him for about 28 days because that's all they can bail for. An occupation order is a better bet to get him out." 21 days later, OP says, "I took advice on this sub and a couple of others and rang the police to report the attack. I spoke to the workers beforehand who said they'd back me up. They arrested my husband and then released him on bail, but told him he couldn't stay at my house, so he's gone to his mum's. After the argument, he told all of our friends that I had cheated. I hadn't wanted to admit to people that I had flashed, but I felt like the tide was really turning against me, and a lot of people were believing his lies, so I wrote a long message with a description of exactly what happened. plus pictures of my injuries, including scrapes and bruises, plus screenshots of messages he sent admitting he asked me to flash and admitting he hit me. Although he did blame me, saying if I just got out like he asked, he wouldn't have had to do that. A few people apologized, most didn't, but I don't care anymore. I'm back home and he has to answer bail in a couple of months. The police don't sound confident they can get a conviction, but maybe that's how they're supposed to sound. I spoke a little bit to a lawyer, but I can't really afford anything at the minute in that way. Been a sad few weeks, but an eye-opener, and I don't feel any guilt for getting the police involved or telling people what happened. Just working and keeping myself busy at the moment. Martinia says, you didn't mention divorce, but I hope that is proceeding and you've retained a lawyer. Grace of the North says, yeah, that's the only happy ending to this story. It is clear that he has stopped liking her a while back and now it's just nasty towards OP. Storm Tomcat says, their age gap caught up to them. He's not mature enough to take charge of his changing sexual identity and taking it out on OP. Hopefully soon his ex. Grump Bugley says, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and reporting his actions, and for not letting him solely control the online narrative. Keep calling him out. Keep calling out his enablers. Keep standing up for yourself. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Frau says, not sure if anyone commented, but please put cameras up outside your house. My ex broke the conditions of his bail twice, managed to get him convicted just by sending the footage of my cameras that he hadn't realized I'd put up. He came back twice to the house to plead his case. Also, you're talking about Yorkshire tea, I'm assuming you're in the UK. Make sure that you go to trial, even if the police tell you it is not necessary. 80% of the time, the charges are dropped just because the victim doesn't show. It will definitely go to court. Also, you won't have to get a solicitor. A prosecution solicitor is going to be allocated. Absolutely, reporting that to the police was definitely the best course of action, and now it's just protecting yourself in any way forward. We've seen some absolute horror stories, and I hope it just moves on and OP gets to continue with their life without that arsehole in the background. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from Potential 2s from the Am I the Arsehole Here subreddit and says, Am I the Arsehole Here for snapping at my wife and calling her crazy because she wants me to take a paternity test for my nephew? Throwaway account for obvious reasons. My wife and I have been married for 10 years and together for 14. We are child-free. I also have a nephew who's currently 13, and I'm not gonna lie, he looks a lot like me and has a lot of the same facial features as me. I'm really proud of him and we have a close bond. I've played a father-like role in his life since he was a kid. He has a deadbeat father and my sister divorced him long ago. A couple of my family members have commented on how my nephew looks a lot like me, and while I initially thought it was wholesome, my wife for some reason became very insecure and started getting doubts. She was questioning why I needed to play such a prominent role in my nephew's life, why my nephew had autism, etc. The insinuations just became weird and made me uncomfortable. I do agree that my sister has played some part in my wife's insecurities because of her dry humor. During family gatherings, my sister jokes a lot about how wholesome it is that her son looks like me, and that she couldn't be happier. It's obviously a joke, but I spoke to my sister and asked if she could tone it down because it was making my wife a bit crazy. However, last night, my wife asked if I could take a paternity test just for her peace of mind. That's when I finally snapped and called her crazy, and that marrying her was the biggest mistake of my life. I did immediately regret saying it because I meant none of it. My wife is the love of my life, but my wife got quiet and started crying shortly after, and I had to console her. Was I the arsehole? Beginning Lemon says, your wife's new homework is Punnett squares. Usernames I'll take and says, for real, my nephew looks exactly like me, and I never even considered this happening. I'm not married, but if I had a wife that was like, prove to me you didn't fuck your sister, I'd be mortified. Maybe unrecoverably so. Slipnir says, my sister and I look a lot like our cousins, my father's older brother's kids, to the point that people in the past said the four of us look like sisters. We've also been told we look a lot like our fathers. If some family member or anyone had suggested something like this, we all would have laughed super hard, especially given that when all the cousins were conceived, my father and his brother lived more than 1,000 miles away from each other. Usernames reply saying some people don't understand how hard genetics go. Tricky's Goose says, totally, I look a lot like my aunt, as in spit in image. It's pretty crazy actually. But I came out of my mum, not her. There were witnesses and everything, I'm told. Securad says, for real, it's so common for children to resemble your siblings since, you know, you guys share a gene pool. My baby is 4 months right now and looks like me, my husband, my brother, my nephews and nieces, and even my great-grandma all at once. Did I somehow fuck all of them for one baby? Ooh, dearie me, that's absolutely messy, isn't it? Accusing you of being with your sister. Like some of the comments says, can you actually move past that in the end? I'm not sure if I'll be able to. And there's a part of this that made me think there's more to this whole post as well. I got no other information apart from this one line when you called her crazy, which I thought, yeah, absolutely. But then you said marrying her was the biggest mistake of my life. I mean, maybe that comment's legit, seeing as she just accused you of being with your sister. I mean, but it just kind of jumped out of nowhere for me. But OP came in with her update and said, hey everyone, quick update. The gist of it is that I've agreed to take the test, but under certain conditions. I understand my wife is being paranoid and delusional, but I want to take the test just to ease whatever irrational fear she has. Sometimes these fears have no logic, and I too have had some irrational fears before, and there was no logic in them. I spoke to my sister about it today, and she was obviously pretty angry at my wife. However, my sister and I discussed it at length, and she agreed to the test under certain conditions. I spoke to my wife and I told her that I would take the test under some conditions. My wife was very happy that I agreed to take the test, and then I told her the conditions. The first condition being that she has to stop these insinuations immediately. My wife immediately agreed to it. The second condition being that there were going to be no more arguments on me spending time with my sister and nephew. My wife and I have had some arguments over the years where she asks why I spend so much time at their house. My wife agreed to the condition, although she took some time to think about it. The third and final condition was that I had liberty to go on vacations with my sister and my nephew, without my wife being there. I told my wife up front that my sister doesn't want her to come on these vacations anymore. My wife was a bit more hesitant on this, but she ultimately agreed to it. That's probably my final update. Thanks everyone for the advice. Seeing as they was going down this condition route, I was really hoping that one of these conditions was going to say therapy at some point down the line. It kind of just felt at the end of that to me that nothing is really going to be resolved with this. You might get the test and the results are going to come back, that OP isn't the father. I feel like I'm in some Jerry Springer show right now. OP isn't the father. But I kind of feel like without some kind of professional help that wife's just gonna, because he said she has to stop the insinuations immediately and that he's gonna be spending time with her sister away from her. It just feels like it's gonna build up all over again, except she's gonna keep it all hidden this time. Build resentment and then it's all gonna explode down the road. That's what it kind of feels like to me anyway. But Jay says, honestly, if I agreed to take the paternity test, the results will come with divorce papers. Hella Shell says, I thought it was going to be under the condition that she got a psych doctor immediately. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Social says, this will clearly resolve everything. /sarcasm. I give her 1 month before she claims you lied about the results or it's a false negative. Miss Morningstar says, the thing is, the test is going to show they're genetically linked because he is the kid's uncle. And that alone might be enough for her to be convinced that he is the father, even when the percentages don't line up. This isn't a mentally stable person he's dealing with. Therapy should be one of his conditions. Kiki Jane says, I have to be honest that I can't believe he even wants to be with his wife anymore. I don't care how much he loves her. I love my husband dearly, but if he ever did what she is doing now, I would instantly be over him. Like for real, it's disgusting, ridiculous, and just makes her look incredibly stupid on top of it. I'd be livid. But how about you guys? How do you guys think this one will end? Do you think they will just move past this amicably after what's been said? I'm not sure. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me, so thank you so much. And don't forget, there'll be a couple of playlists at the end there that you can click on and it'll automatically scroll through all the videos for you. So whatever you're up to, you may have seen on my Twitter recently I got into painting Warhammer. First time in many years. Absolutely loved it, so I'm going to continue doing that as well as my million other hobbies that I have. But let us know what you're doing while you're listening over at Mark Narrations over on Twitter, and Send us a pics of your arts and crafts, your travels, all that good stuff, if you can as well. Much love to you, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, and much love.